Sly, covert, sneaky.
Undetectable by radar.
Sometimes it's about the aircraft you can't see.
Shh. Today we're learning all about stealth.
This is STEM in 30. Hi, I'm Beth.
And I'm Marty, and welcome to the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum's Stephen F. Udvar-Hazy Center in Chantilly, Virginia.
Ever since airplanes were used in warfare, opposing forces wanted to know when they were coming so that they could be ready for an imminent attack. In the 1930s, they got just that with radio detection and ranging, or radar,
which would allow them to know when planes were in the area.
Radar has all kinds of applications. Air traffic control uses it to keep planes a safe distance apart. It's even used to predict the weather. Radar uses radio waves. Like the radio in a car, they're sent from a transmitter and bounced back to a receiver, just like you seeing your reflection in a mirror. By measuring the time it takes the wave to get back, you can calculate the distance to that object.
Now, it sounds like something that a bunch of really smart people must have come up with, but in fact, it has its roots in nature.
I am really excited about this next part. If you've watched the Wildcrats, you know who our next guest is. Let's head over to Chris Kratt.
Hi, it's Chris Kratt here from the television shows Wildcrats, Zaboomafoo, Kratts Creatures, and Be the Creature. We make shows about animals, my brother and I, and we are creature adventurers. Echolocation is a really cool science concept that animals use in nature. It's the use of sound waves in order to navigate your environment. We're used to seeing things. That's how we get an idea of what's in our environment. But bats, while they can see too, they also have this echolocation. So they make these high-pitched sounds, and those sounds go out and bounce off objects, come back to them, and their brain is able to decipher the objects and the things within its environment. And the system is really sophisticated in order to help them catch prey, avoid predators, and navigate. They all work in the same basic way, sending out sound waves or different kinds of waves, having them bounce back, and then detecting them when they return.
What are you doing?
Chris said that waves are how radar works, so I'm trying it out.
How's that working out for you?
It's got its ups and downs.
You know, I've got some friends who can show us the types of waves Chris was talking about.
You should try this at home.
Hi, I'm Haley, and this is a wave machine. It's pretty cool, huh? This is a super simple and really fun demonstration to create. Try this at home. To create your own wave machine, you'll need gummy candy, long wooden skewers, duct tape, and something to attach the ends to, like the back of 2 chairs or countertops in your kitchen. First, take the skewers and put a gummy on each end. Once you have them all made, you'll need to attach your duct tape to each end where the machine will be. You'll need to make sure the tape is stretched tight and has tension. If your tape is too loose, then the waves won't work. Finally, you'll start by replacing your skewers as evenly spaced across your tape as possible, about 2 inches apart. If your machine starts to get lopsided or lean a certain way, you can fix it by sliding the gummy candies closer in on the skewer until it sits flat. Got it? Let's see how this works. You'll want to start out just moving one end of the machine with a single disturbance. Just move one gummy up and let it go. This will start your wave moving down the machine. What we're seeing here is the transfer of energy. The energy that I just gave to the gummy is transferring through the machine. This is how waves work. Whether it's a sound wave used in echolocation or a radar wave on airplanes and detection systems, when the waves hit the chair, they bounce back to me just like the radar. It works by the transfer of energy going out, then coming back. You could change the height or amplitude of the wave by lifting the first gummy higher to start. This will create a larger wave or a bigger transfer of energy. The way that radar detects an aircraft or another object is by a disruption in these waves. If the waves bounce back instead of continuing their path, the system can detect that something is flying through the airspace that would usually be open to waves.
Maybe it's time for you to go into stealth mode. That's better. Understanding how waves react to objects allows engineers to think of ways to avoid radar and other detection devices. Early attempts at these radar countermeasures involved releasing chaff, or little bits of metal from airplanes. As the chaff floated around in the air, radar waves were reflected in all different directions as they bounced off the fluttering bits. This made it appear that there were airplanes everywhere, so the enemy did not know where to look. As countermeasures became more advanced, so did radar detection. Instead of making the radar screens light up in lots of different places to confuse the enemy, engineers decided to try and make the plane disappear altogether. Let's head over to the National Museum of the United States Air Force to learn more about stealth.
Today I'm in Dayton, Ohio at the National Museum of the United States Air Force, and I'm joined by Jeff DeFord. Jeff, thanks so much for talking with us today.
It's a pleasure to be here today.
We are in front of the F-117. Tell us about this plane.
This is the F-117 Nighthawk, but it's known to the world as the stealth fighter. It could perform in a way that no other aircraft could by being virtually invisible on radar screens.
How did it do that?
Well, it's kind of a myth that it was completely invisible. What it did is it directed energy in different directions. So you can think of it kind of like a flashlight. If you shine a flashlight into a mirror, the light comes right back on you. But if you angle that mirror in such a way that the light goes in a different direction, then you're essentially sitting in the dark. That's what the F-117 did. And in fact, if you look at the structure of the airplane, it has a bunch of flat facets, operating kind of like a mirror would if a light was shined on it.
Pretty much everything on this airplane is designed to keep it from being detected by radar, right?
That's right. The designers, the people who built the aircraft, and the folks who maintained it had to pay attention to every single last detail. For instance, radar energy could get into the cockpit through the cockpit glass. It was made out of a special material. Then it also had a special coating over the entire aircraft called RAM, or radar absorbent material. And lastly, they had to be very careful about any seam, any little blemish in the surface. They would have to repair that, or the airplane would then be able to be seen on radar.
Wow. And it looks like it's got little jagged edges all over the place. Why the jagged edges?
It does. You see that everywhere, not only on main structures in the aircraft, but along panel lines and things like that. And again, it goes back to the same thing, trying to control the radar emissions bouncing off the aircraft so that an enemy radar couldn't see it.
Wow. Can we go take a look around?
Yeah, let's go.
Awesome. We're underneath the F-117 by the bomb bay doors. What are we looking at here?
Well, what we're looking at is one of two bomb bays in the F-117, and this is what the F-117 is made to deliver. And the F-117, it's called a fighter, but it really isn't. It's really an attack aircraft or a bomber aircraft.
How do you make a door that doesn't reflect radar?
You know, that's a great question. Not possible. So just for a moment, while these bomb bay doors were open and they were releasing the weapons, the airplane lit up radar screens. So it would release it very, very quickly, and the doors would shut very quickly.
This plane kind of paved the way for how weapons are delivered on future aircraft, right?
That's right. So basically, a stealth aircraft has to carry its weapons internally to be stealthy. So the F-117 was the first aircraft to do this, but follow-on aircraft like the Air Force's most modern fighters, the F-22, F-35, carry their weapons internally when they're in stealth mode.
This is so cool under here. We've moved to the back, and I've always wondered, where's the exhaust?
Well, the F-117 has a very special exhaust. So radar is one way that an enemy could see our aircraft, but infrared is another way that an enemy could detect our airplanes, and jet engines are terrible about emitting heat. So F-117 has a very special exhaust. It has two long slits along the back end, and that very hot jet exhaust is diffused as it comes out in the back end of the aircraft.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for showing us around today.
My pleasure.
As you've just learned, the shape of the F-117 was designed to minimize detection on radar. This includes the sharp angles, a canted or slanted tail, and even absorbent paint. But when the shape of the plane changes because the bomb bay doors are open, it changes what shows up on radar. If you want to see how shape and color affect how an object is observed, then you can try this at home.
An object's shape and surface characteristics affect how we see it. Things like flat mirrors bounce light straight back at you, but if you change the material and shape, can you still see it? Let's find out. Hi, I'm Haley. Try this at home. First, you're going to need to gather a few things from around the house. You'll need a medium-sized box, some black construction paper, tape, scissors, a small flashlight, and a pencil and paper to take notes on. Now we can get started. Use the tape to line the inside of the box with the black construction paper. You want to make sure there isn't any tape visible inside the box. Make sure all of the inside is covered. With the scissors, poke a hole in the side of the box about 2 inches from the bottom. You may want to have an adult help you with this part. You want the hole to be just big enough to fit the flashlight through. Make sure you can turn the flashlight off and on from outside while the light can still shine in the box. Now it's time to put objects in the box and see how much light they reflect back. We're going to test this with a few different items we found around the house. We've made our objects out of black paper, white paper, and tin foil, and shaped them into cylinders, crumpled cylinders, W shapes, and V shapes. We are going to put the light meter in the box above the flashlight. You can also use a light meter app on your phone, or just look with your eye. Use your pencil and paper to take notes on the color and shape of each object, and be sure to note how much light bounces back. What shapes and colors work best for you?
When you shine the flashlight into the box, it bounces off the objects that are in there. This is a lot like the way radar waves bounce off an airplane body or a cross-section. If you're interested in trying this at home, use different shapes and colors. Let us know what your results are in the comments below. For the most part, big planes appear like big planes on radar, and small planes appear like small planes on radar. But sometimes, big planes can appear like small planes on the radar screen. This is because the plane's designers engineered the plane to have a small radar cross-section. The body of the plane is designed to absorb the radar signal or reflect it in another direction, making it look smaller than it really is and throwing off the enemy. The B-2 has a wingspan wider than 4 school buses parked end to end, but on radar, it shows up as small as a model airplane. No one would suspect anything so tiny to be a threat. Marty has headed over to the B-2 Spirit at the National Museum of the United States Air Force. Let's go back and learn more about stealth.
Tell us about the stealth technology on the B-2.
So the B-2 has a capability that no other aircraft in the world has. The B-2 is really a second-generation stealth aircraft, and the big characteristic here is that we see curved shapes. Early on in the development of stealth technology, some thought it was only possible to have faceted shapes like on the F-117. Well, the B-2 obviously kind of blows that away.
We're at the back of the B-2 and I don't see any engines.
Yeah, well, engines for stealth aircraft are a big problem because the fan blades on jet engines reflect radar waves, which are detectable, and also they give off a lot of heat, which is also detectable by infrared. So in the case of the B-2, its engines are buried in the wings. It has 4 engines, 2 in each wing, and the inlets for the engines are very carefully shaped. The engine exhaust is actually on top of the wing and it's forward of the trailing edge of the wing. By putting it there, it makes it much more difficult to detect the heat coming off those engines when viewed from below.
Wow. The other thing that I don't see behind us is a tail. How does this plane fly without a tail?
That's a great question. Tails are a real problem with stealth aircraft because they can reflect radar. So the best way to deal with the problem with a vertical tail is just don't have one. So in the case of the B-2, it is a flying wing. And what's kind of interesting is that the same company, Northrop, actually built some flying wings, and the B-2 actually borrowed some of the control systems used in those flying wings at the end of World War II to fly itself. And what makes it all work is the fly-by-wire system, because it's a fairly unstable platform, but having computers that constantly check on the attitude of the aircraft and keep it stable make it a really great platform.
Well, thanks for showing us around.
Oh, my pleasure.
Did you notice the stealth design of the B-2? It doesn't look like your typical airplane because it is all wing. Unlike most airplanes, there is no fuselage, and the cockpits, where the pilots sit, is a small space at the front of the wing. This is all done to reduce radar reflecting surfaces. The B-2 is one of the Air Force's greatest pieces of technology. The engineers who designed it also took a cue from nature. The B-2's shape mimics the shape of a peregrine falcon. Check out how their shapes are exactly the same when in flight. When the Falcon takes flight, it can fly over 200 miles per hour. They are the fastest animal on the planet. The B-2 can fly just over 600 miles per hour, which isn't all that fast for a jet, but it can do it all in stealth mode. Not just anyone can fly a B-2. It takes years of training in the Air Force, except this one time.
Hi, I'm Dean Kamen, and this one time I went to Washington looking for help for things I believe in, like my first program. And I was prepared to go and ask the Secretary of Defense of the United States and some of his very close support people who had been fantastic in supporting FIRST over the years. In fact, the United States Department of Defense had more than 1,000 firsters. And during the meeting, it came up that I'm a pilot. And one of them said, well, you know, we have all sorts of cool planes. And I said, I know. There's one I'd really like to fly. What's that? I said, how about the stealth bomber, the B-2? I'm always asking people to help first. And I always tell people, you always put more into it than you thought, but you always get more out of it than you'd ever expect. And that one time I realized I get more out of FIRST than I ever expect. Because had I not been down there in FIRST-related work, I don't think I would have had the opportunity to fly the B-2. I flew the B-2!
While many aircraft were not designed for stealth, lessons learned from stealth design, like the B-2, helped many airplanes avoid enemy detection. Planes like the FA-18 Hornet and the B-1 Lancer have angled and shallower surfaces to reduce their radar cross-section. But stealth isn't the only way to keep a pilot safe. Marty has moved from the Air Force Museum to the CIA Museum, where he's going to learn more about planes that can outrun the enemy.
I'm at CIA headquarters, joined by David Robarge, the CIA's chief historian. David, thanks for talking with us today.
Happy to be here.
We are standing underneath an incredible airplane. What is it?
It's the A-12 Oxcart, the CIA's high-speed, high-flying reconnaissance aircraft. It is the highest flying, fastest operational piloted jet aircraft ever made.
What was the mission of the A-12?
To spy on the Soviet Union.
That's a pretty simple mission statement. How did it do that?
It overflew the Soviet Union at about 80,000 feet, or was intended to. It was never used for that purpose, though. We wound up using it in Southeast Asia and North Korea, because by then the Vietnam War was heating up. We couldn't fly over the Soviet Union because a U-2 had been shot down a number of years before, and we just weren't going to do that.
What did a typical mission look like?
A typical mission for an A-12 would take anywhere between 4 and 5 hours. You started out in Guam. You took off with a slight load of fuel. Then you got your fuel tanks topped off by a tanker. Then you flew your mission over the target area. If you were doing one loop, you got refueled again to get back home. If you were doing a second loop, you got refueled for just that loop. In Thailand, we had a base there where the tankers operated out of. Then they would fly back to Guam, jettison some of the fuel in case of an accident, and then land.
Did it ever get shot at?
3 times. In one case, a piece of shrapnel from a surface-to-air missile hit one of the engine nacelles, Otherwise, just shot at and no damage.
I don't see any guns on it.
No, because no one ever expected it to be attacked by a jet aircraft. It could fly so high and so fast that nothing could ever catch it.
How fast would it go?
It could go about 2,100 miles an hour, which is about the equivalent of half a mile a second.
Wow. What's the difference between an A-12 and the SR-71?
They're often confused because this was a secret aircraft and the SR-71 was publicly known. The main difference is this has one pilot, because all he needed to do was fly the aircraft and turn the cameras on and off. The SR-71 took other kinds of intelligence. It had other sensors on board, so you needed a special officer to sit behind the pilot to work those machines. It's also smaller and lighter than the SR-71 and flies a bit faster and a bit higher as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for showing us around.
You're welcome.
The A-12 Ox Cart and the SR-71 Blackbird look almost identical. Both were designed to meet the requirements for speed, altitude, range, and radar cross-section, or what we call stealth. In the end, some of the stealth requirements were given up for aerodynamics and safety. We hear it was quite a ride.
My name is Walter Watson. I'm a retired United States Air Force colonel. I spent almost 5 years flying the SR-71 Blackbird behind me. I am the first, last and only African American to qualify to be a crew member in the SR-71. I served on the SR-71 Blackbird as a Reconnaissance Systems Officer, RSO. That was my job. My job was to make sure that the airplane was electronically defended and to operate the various sensor systems on the airplane. Most of the RSOs will tell you, we had to learn both cockpits. They didn't have to learn our cockpit. We had to know their cockpit far better than we knew our own cockpit because their cockpit got us home. It wasn't that I decided when I got in the Air Force, I'm going to fly the SR-71. It didn't happen that way. The SR-71, late 60s, was very, very low profile. You kind of heard about it, but you didn't know anything about that. This airplane cruised at 2,000 miles an hour. If you're not doing 2,000 miles an hour, it's like driving around in your car with 1 foot on the brake and 1 foot on the gas. It's designed for its mission. Extremely high, 16 miles up, over 85,000 feet, and moving at 2,000 miles an hour. That's faster than a bullet. You may see the Mach meter head over toward Mach 1, and because as you go transonic, it does a little ditter and then it proceeds over. So you don't have that big rush or a whole lot of physical feeling. The biggest thing that happens to you is you're in a spacesuit. And inside the spacesuit, everything that you do, you share it with yourself intimately. Normally, you know a few days in advance where you're gonna go and what you're gonna do. Brian and I operated in just about every place on this globe, in the European area, in the Caribbean area, in the Southeast Asian area. A typical mission for us in the backseat, we may have an all-optical sensor package, we may have a radar package. We're always going to be doing some type of electronic intelligence, if you will. Hardest thing about all of that is keeping track of what's going on with the various sensors, because things are happening quite fast when you're moving at 33 miles a minute. If they said all of their ships are in port, are they in fact in port? That's the kind of information we went out after, which gave the National Command Authority a chance to be able to negotiate from a position of knowledge and power. The thing that got your attention is when you knew that somebody was looking at you and they intended to end your weekend. And when you picked up those signals, that was the time when Brian and I had to be able to communicate. If we can go faster, we can defeat most threats. It was a great experience, a very challenging experience, and an experience that opened up lots of opportunities, not just for me, but for the people who were around me.
Getting pilots higher and faster kept them safer. But the only real way to keep them safe is to get them out of the skies. Drones can do that, but just how stealthy are they?
We call them drones, but in the military, they're known as remotely piloted vehicles, or RPVs. From the small drones you might get as a birthday present or code in school, to the larger drones used by the government and military, drones come in many shapes and sizes and serve a variety of roles. While drones do a good job of keeping pilots out of harm's way, most drones are not stealthy. Even though they are designed with a small cross-section in mind, the things that make RPVs like the Predator useful don't usually come in a very stealthy package. Drones need to be able to keep up with long-duration flights, often cruising for hours collecting data, spotting a target, or doing reconnaissance missions. RPVs need to communicate with people on the ground since they cannot make decisions on their own. In order for drones to have complete stealth, they would need to be able to survive in an airspace where they could operate without communications like GPS and data relays. A stealth RPV would need to be able to think on its own by using a very smart artificial intelligence. Until drones are smart enough to tell the difference between a real target from a nearly perfect decoy, or make a tough call by itself while in the air, stealthy and fully autonomous drones are not going to be practical.
Stealth technology has changed a lot since the early days. Variations in size, shape, and paint job have influenced some of the planes we've looked at today, all the way up to the F-22 Raptor that the Air Force is flying right now. Imagine being invisible, just like Marty.
What do you think the next great innovation in stealth technology will be? Something invisible like Wonder Woman's jet? Let us know down in the comments section.
And if you like this video, be sure to follow STEM in 30 on Facebook and Twitter, and subscribe to the National Air and Space Museum's YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. Sly, covert, and sneaky. What are you doing?
What John wrote in the script. If John writes it in the script, I do it. Whatever John says,